Hey guys, Spenny here. So in today's video, we're going to talk about Palantir's biggest risk. So I'm going to go through an article where this Seeking Alpha analyst talks about his biggest risk that he sees around the company. Then after the article, I'm going to go into my top 3 biggest risks that I see with Palantir. So if you are invested in Palantir, it's very important to understand the bull case, and I've laid out the bull case in quite a few of my videos. So make sure to watch them so you understand kind of that bull thesis around the stock. But what's actually more important is to understand the bear case of a stock. So for me, I will spend a ton of time understanding the company, building my story around the company, and then forming this bull case on why I want to invest. But I'll actually spend twice the amount of time understanding the bear case. I don't want to be negligent and ignore what the bears are saying. I want to really deep dive into why they're bearish on the company. That way I can have a very informed opinion and total understanding around the company. So it's even more important to understand the bears. So in today's video, we're going to try to understand where they're coming from. Now, before we do get into this video, make sure to drop it a big thumbs up if you like it. Feel free to subscribe for more Palantir content. I'm covering this stock almost every day of the week. So diving straight into the article, Palantir's biggest risk are a powerful and politically connected list of enemies that includes Google and George Soros. So getting into George Soros, I don't think a lot of people actually know this. Back in, I believe, in November 19th, this article was published. George Soros' fund is offloading Palantir shares because it does not approve of its business practices. Palantir has been described as a company that knows everything about you, and its software is used by government surveillance agencies around the world for spying. Now, so essentially the risk here is that some investors are going to stay clear of Palantir because they don't like the practices that they're doing. This is the same thing with supporting different private prison companies. A lot of people want to see them go bankrupt, and they will not invest their money in those companies. However, I don't think Palantir is as bad as George Soros claims it to be. So I don't really see this as a risk personally, and I have no problem putting my money into Palantir. So yeah, just something to be aware of though. So some of the enemies have big reasons to ensure that any association with Palantir is controversial. Putting the power of data and analytics in the hand of a diverse group of organizations is a threat to the highly centralized status quo. Palantir's success will rest on Alex Karp's ability to navigate criticism. Fortunately for Palantir investors, the company seems to be gaining traction and momentum based on a constant stream of new partnerships and customer announcements. So there's really no significant risk that's laid out in that part of the article. Moving on to the next part. On the other hand, Google's position may be more vulnerable than it seems. TSMC has demonstrated the power of industry collaboration, toppling the mighty Intel. Perhaps we might see a similar dynamic with IBM focusing on quantum hardware, Microsoft focusing on quantum programming language, and Palantir focusing on a collaborative data platform for deployment. Google has to juggle a shift towards the industrial internet, quantum computing R&D, apps that offer privacy-focused alternatives, and mounting criticism of the entire business model. Now, despite this obsolescence risk, Google remains one of the most powerful corporations in history, complete with detailed psychographic profiles that cover a significant portion of the population. The ability to combine their vast data troves with power of quantum computing is truly a mind-bending possibility. We are neutral on Google's outlook. Google could become the quantum era's Arasaka or its AOL. So I'm actually very bullish on Google. I think that AI is going to be one of the most important things moving into the future. A tech company without good AI, I think, is really going to struggle as we move into the future. Google's AI is dangerously good. There's been people such as Elon Musk that has talked a little bit about AI, how it can be really bad in the wrong hands, and he hinted towards Google. Now, I think that this is very good for Google, maybe not the best for the world. We'll see how it all plays out. So yeah, I just don't see Google's success being a risk to Palantir in my opinion. I think Palantir has equally good software, AI, all of that. Now, moving on, we're very bullish on Palantir, but we will readily admit the difficulties of valuing such a business. It is more of an art than a science. If Palantir succeeds, it will have a software platform that connects and manages entire industries. This is enough to make Palantir's revenue guidance seem conservative. At the same time, leveraging AI/ML will decrease the costs associated with scaling the business using computers to write code. This is something we discussed in previous articles. So I agree with what they're saying here 100%. I've talked about the difficulties in valuing Palantir. The best investors in the world, in my opinion, don't know how to value them. And this is why there's going to be so much volatility. I'm actually going to get into that risk in just a second, so I'll talk more about that. Another thing that they talked about here is that their software platform is going to connect entire industries. This is a network effect. I don't think people are factoring in the amount of growth potential as this scales. It's absolutely massive, and I've talked a little bit about this in my previous videos as well. Make sure to check them out if you haven't. Palantir's potential is ultimately one of the biggest in the world if they can really scale this network effect, and I think they will be able to. I think that Palantir's potential is actually drastically underappreciated. For whatever reason that might be. I think it's mostly because people just don't understand their business. Now I want to talk about my 3 biggest risks. I'm going to quickly fly through this with you guys. So the first risk is their stock price. So if you're a long-term investor, this won't matter. However, if you're trying to trade this stock or have a small time frame of just say around 2 years or so, I think Palantir will be a very volatile stock, and even the best investors will have trouble valuing this. This is going to cause many different opinions on where the price should be. So in my opinion, this stock should be in your long-term basket. It's going to be way too difficult in the short term. There's so many different opinions around Palantir. People are generally very confused on what they do, and I don't think we're going to have a very clear understanding for several years away. They're a very newly publicly traded company, so over the next few years, as we get more information around the company, I think there'll be a better understanding, and then maybe you can look at short-term trades. But for now, this is definitely a better long-term trade in my opinion. Now moving on to number 2, so many people are worried about them losing government contracts because this is a big portion of their revenue. And yes, this would be very bad if they lost the contracts. However, I see this as a very low probability. They have 17 years of working with the government. I see no reason to suddenly worry about this. If anything, they've just embedded their relationships with the government, and this is even going to be harder and harder to break this relationship as we move on. In my opinion, this is just solidified. I don't see any risk in them losing government contracts. Very low probability of probably like 1% in my opinion. Now, number 3, some people think that there's risk because there's other competition out there. I don't see this as a risk. You're seeing Palantir score some massive deals with very credible, established blue chip companies. They're also very well established within the government. There's really no reason to believe that there's competitors that are going to way outperform Palantir. Palantir is hiring some of the best talent around the world. I don't see this as a risk moving forward. Now, those are some of the most popular risks around the stock. As far as short-term price action goes, if we actually look at the chart, there's nothing really significant about this chart. Some are worried about a head and shoulders pattern forming. Definitely does look like one, and we are trading below moving averages. So as far as short-term price action goes, I don't see any reason to be overly bullish. I don't think the stock is going to explode next week unless the broader market goes on a rally. If the broader market goes on a rally, then yes, Palantir is going to go higher. However, the pattern isn't indicating anything overly bullish to me, so I don't think that we're going to see any drastic moves. I think that we'll trade in the low $20 range next week, and this could be a good opportunity to buy up shares in the low 20s. Definitely a good buying opportunity if you're a long-term investor. If you only have a time frame of 6 months, this could be risky. We don't know where the stock's going to go from here. The broader market's looking very shaky, so just keep that all in mind. Anyways, guys, this video is getting way too long, so that's all I have for you. Thanks for watching till then. Really appreciate that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Palantir content, and I'll see you guys on the next video.